On this episode of Luthiers Lunch Break, we have first-time guest Scott from Sweet Tea Guitars showing us his method for carving a neck. Lars Grape returns, this time with the first episode in his series on fan fret guitars. Mr. Glyn's Pickups is here to show us how stereo input jacks work. Ben from Mars-Tronic has got a great tip to make your guitar wiring look neat. Garland is back with more of his top tips for everyday tools. I've got a clip all about my magic sauce. And of course we've got highlights from the first year of live streams of the Guitar Builders Chat podcast. And at the end I've dropped in some information about the Jörg's Cup, the community guitar building competition. Now, just before we start this episode, I want to let you know that you can find links to all of the different contributors in the video description below. Links off to their YouTube channels and their other social media pages and websites. There's also a link to a Luthiers Lunch Break playlist. You can subscribe to that to see all the past episodes and have notifications of the new ones. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to hit like, share this with your friends. You can give me a super thanks if you really like what I'm doing. But what would be great is if you subscribe to my channel, Devil & Sons Guitars. Okay, let's get on with the show.
Hey everybody, it's Todd from Sweet Tea Guitars. Welcome to the Luthiers Lunch Break. Let's take a look at a condensed version of my method for shaping a guitar neck. What I like to do is go in at my no-go line and cut myself a flat right there. That kind of helps me from going too far. I really love hand carving a neck. It's one of the things that I take so much pride in. I'm going to switch over to the fine cut Iwasaki, get it as close as we can to the tape, but mainly what we're shooting for now that we're pretty close to that tape edge is we want to create a flat all the way down this length. Of all the facets we're going to cut, this first one is the most important because it establishes whether or not everything else you do winds up flat, even, level. So we want to make ourselves a mark at the halfway point, which is 8 millimeters. We want this to be as close to perfect as we can get. Make ourselves a line down that 8 millimeter mark, and that splits that facet in half. We're going to do the same thing on this side. What we want to do now is come halfway in between our center line and the top line of this facet on both sides. We need to measure that distance. That's just a hair over 15 millimeters. We'll go to 8. All right, then we'll come down here and measure this. These should be different because we observed the taper. All right, down here we got 12 millimeters. So we want to be at 6. This facet we're about to cut is shallower than the facet we cut the first time. So this should go a little quicker. Okay, so what we're wanting to do is take this new facet and we want to cut it from these 2 points of the tape right here to the center line. We've got a well-defined point on our center line right here. We've got 2 defined points right off of our center line, right outside that maple. Another defined point here, and then one here. I'm going to cut that point right there off and connect these 2 facets. So now at this point is when I start to move to sandpaper and a sanding block. As long as you keep your facets flat, you can create yourself a really nice neck profile. Consistent, no humps, no valleys, everything's great. I went ahead and sanded this thing up to 320 grit, which I always do. I do that so I can kind of get a feel for what the profile is going to end up being like, and I love that heel. The shape's nice, The headstock transition's great. This is a super comfortable neck. All right, you guys, thanks for checking out the Luthiers Lunch Break. Thank you to Daniel from Devil & Sons and all the members of the Guitar Builders Collective for inviting me to share this with you guys today. I'll see you right back here in the future and over on my channel at Sweet Tea Guitars right here on YouTube. And until then, back to the show.
Hello guys, my name is Lars, and in this series of video I'm going to talk about multiscale, and I want to take you on a journey on why we build a multiscale instrument to actually make the project and design the body for your multiscale instrument. So let's start from the beginning. What is the scale length? Now I want to do this video because I believe that scale length is a measurement that we take for granted and we don't mess too much with it, even though we should. Now how string instruments work is actually pretty simple. You take a string, you put it under tension at a specific length, and then you make it vibrate, and that it vibrates at a specific frequency, give you the note. In an instrument like an harp or a piano, you simply take the same type of string, you stack it one against each other, but you make it progressively longer, giving you a lower note each time. But in a guitar, for the way they are built, you cannot do that because you have now a fixed point for your net and the bridge, and that distance is the scale length. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to have like 6 strings of the same type. So in order to maximize the range that you can have, they work with different thickness. And the catch is this: the thicker the string and the longer the string, the lower it can get. But also there is a minimum requirement of scale length to make it work properly, otherwise it will sound sloppy. On the other hand, the thinner the string, the higher the pitch, but it will need a shorter scale length, otherwise it will sound too thin, no sustain, and it will be brought to break. Choosing the scale length for instrument is kinda do a compromise. You are deciding what is the lower note that you will need for that instrument for serving its purposes, because lower notes are more important in a musical situation. And then you fix the scale length and you put as much string as you can until they cannot work anymore. There's basically that. There are also other parts of reason, but there's that. So you need a lower note, you make a bass, you make it very long, it will be kind of uncomfortable, but you cannot get that lower note with the clarity on a guitar. Otherwise, you need something that is a little more melodic and can play chord, a lot of notes, shorter guitar. You need something that is higher to make the more melody line over everything else and be here very clearly, even shorter and more violin. So the scale length on your instrument was born out of necessity, but that doesn't mean that you cannot mess around with it just a tiny bit. I give you an example. If you take a guitar, okay, that 25.5-inch scale length works great for a normal tuning. But if you make the instrument for yourself or someone else and you know that they want to tune the guitar down because they play metal, punk rock or whatever, and they just want to tune that in drop D or drop C, instead of making it 25.5 inches, you can make it 26, and that half an inch will make a long way on how the guitar will sound actually. So don't be afraid to mess around with the scale length, because that measurement is not set in stone. It's up to you and up to the instrument that you want to make. Now, I hope that everything was clear, and in the next video I'm going to talk on why we make multiscale guitar.
Hi folks, hope you're doing well. I'm going to have a chat about the really cool subject of stereo jack sockets and why you need one in your life, and hopefully you'll be as excited as I am by the end of this. Okay, here we go. This is what a stereo jack socket kind of looks like. This is the base bit with the thready bit, and then we got the tip, and then we've got the other bit, yeah? Now, firstly, I think they're really useful just generally in a guitar. Here in Auckland, it's really humid, and we get lots and lots of connections oxidizing. So having another earth, if this is connected to here, you've got two earths, so when you put your lead in, you kind of double your chances of it being okay. Also, the lead goes in more firmly, so it goes clunk clunk instead of clunk. It just gives a better connection. It's less likely to fall out and it connects better. Okay, so that's one use. The other use is as a switch for an active circuit. So if you had, like, you know, a circuit with a battery, like at EMGs or with acoustic instruments. So here is a stereo male jack. Not a very good one, but there you go. Now this, as we all know, it's got the earth and it's got left and right, or right and left, I'm not sure which connects to those three. Easy peasy. Now, the way to use it as a switch, if you plug a mono jack into the stereo jack socket, you can see how it would connect this part to earth. So the way they work as a switch is this connector is connected to the negative of the battery, and this is connected to the negative chassis of the instrument. So when you plug your jack in, it connects this to this, therefore switches the battery on, but more importantly, switches the battery off when you remove it. Now, if you got those wires the wrong way round, it would still work, but the battery would never switch off. And that's a common fault. Customer comes in, hey, my battery keeps draining really quickly, what do I do? That's what you're testing for. You're testing where that battery negative goes to. Is it going to here or is it going to here? Now, one of the little jack socket related tip, while we're all really excited by them, is tightening up the nut on a jack socket. Easy peasy on some guitars, but on, let's say, an ES335, it is very hard because you can't hold the back of it while you tighten the nut, and the whole thing can spin and shear the wire off, and then it's a big problem. So this is a 6mm expanding bolt. You'll have seen these, easy to get hold of. They're for masonry, and you screw the thing in it and it expands. 6mm. Your jack socket is 1/4 inch, which is 6.3mm, so it pops in nicely. You can tighten it up. Finger tight is good enough, and then you just tighten the nut with a spanner from the outside. So you can tighten up your ES335 jack sockets with ease. Well, there you go. Hopefully you are now frothing, and as I am, about stereo jack sockets.
So I'm wiring up this guitar for a friend, and while I'm doing that I thought I'd briefly share a tip with you that I found about pushback cloth wire, hookup wire. So my background is in electrical engineering, and when I'm building a panel I oftentimes think about the best way to make the panel future-proof, so it's easy to maintain, so the next person that comes to it can easily make changes as required, and also I want it to last a long time into the future. So when I saw this tip, I immediately put it to use. Now, as we know, pushback cloth wire, the ends tend to fray. So here is the hookup wire. When it's freshly cut, it looks fine. You can push back the cloth covering the wire quite easily, but that's going to fray over time quite quickly, and even fray as you're wiring it up. So a simple solution is a little piece of heat shrink. It doesn't have to be much. It could even be less than this. And let it overhang the edge just a little bit. Then, heat gun. And you're left with a very neat edge. And that wire now can be pulled back quite easily. It can be put back again, The ends of the wire are not going to fray. Now I'll just have a look at these two I've got. These two pots were wired up identically. This one, done in the usual way, the ends have all frayed, and it leaves a risk of leaves it at risk of making contact with other metal parts, which we don't want. And also it looks a little bit messy, doesn't it? Whereas this one, the heat shrink, it's only a very small piece, has kept everything in check. It can be slid back quite easily, and it stays back, so that makes it easier to work on, and then it can be pushed back again as required. So as you can see, there are some advantages to spending a few seconds to put the heat shrink on. So that's my little tip, how a little bit of heat shrink on the end of pushback cloth wire can make it super maintainable and keep your circuits that you've spent so much time putting together in the first place looking nice and doing you proud. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you the next time.
Hello again everybody. I've got a few more little tips based mainly on everyday objects in the workshop. Some of them are embarrassingly simple, but I'll put them out there anyway just in case somebody finds them useful. A couple are based on a repair which I've just done on an electric guitar, which I'll show you. It's on the bench now. The repair's actually finished, but I can illustrate some of the things I was using, which kind of fall into the theme for my contributions to the Luthiers Lunch Break. So let's get into it. So here's the guitar. As you can see, it's an Ibanez. I know nothing about electrics. It's an Ibanez electric guitar, and it came with a really nasty. It had been dropped, I think. There was a large chunk of the finish missing from this part of the back and just around near where the jack socket is. The wood was also dented underneath, so it's a pretty heavy drop. The finish they put on is really quite thick. It was probably 1 millimetre or so of something, I don't know what. So basically the job was to fill it, get it more or less level, and then I put a coat of just general purpose primer on. I had some microwave spray paint. I don't know why I've got this, but the colour match was actually very good. So that's what I used for the main colour coat. And then I put some gloss lacquer on the top. The thing I wanted to show was that as part of the touch-up process, I needed to put very small amounts of the paint on to fill little dings which weren't properly leveled, so it was kind of like a drop fill. And for that I just sprayed the paint onto a bit of newspaper and picked up a small amount with an artist's paintbrush, and that's one of the everyday things. I've got a set of these and they're all really cheap. They're just supermarket ones, but they're very good for putting small dabs of varnish or paint or lacquer or whatever it is. And then the second thing is, I often find that I'm working with very small quantities of something. In this case it would be thinner to clean the brush afterwards, and I save these bottle tops so I can just pour a very small amount of thinner in to clean the brush. And these are also very good for mixing small amounts of stain with drops of colour in, that kind of thing. You can also use them for epoxy because they're plastic lined and nothing sticks to them when it's dry. Of course you can mix epoxy on a piece of marking tape on the bench, and that's as good as anything for epoxy, but anything that's very, water thin, you need a container, and these are dead handy for that kind of thing. So that was those two things, artist paintbrushes and bottle tops, or I also keep these sort of fish paste containers, similar thing. They've got a kind of plastic coating on the inside so nothing sticks to it. And actually, while we're on the subject of artists' supplies, this is another thing I've found useful. I've shown my my old table knife in a previous video, which is one of my most used tools in the whole workshop. But for all that it's quite flexible steel, sometimes you need something a little bit more bendy still. And this artist's spatula is great, and I did use it, in fact, for doing the fill before the primer coat even. So basically I used a kind of paste wood filler, and this has got just the right amount of spring, and it's great for smoothing off because it's flat and shiny. So again, just a cheapo supermarket version, nothing fancy, but very useful for any kind of paste fill or that sort of thing. The next one's another sanding block tip. I didn't in this repair, but just pretend I had to touch up the paint here, and so sand in this tight curve here. You can use an old credit card, which if you heat them up will bend quite nicely to conform to an inside curve. So I'll show you that. You can see this is very flexible indeed, and you can get it to bend into pretty much whatever shape you want. Okay, so that's only partially done, but you can see it's fitting this part of the curve quite well, and I could continue and bend the rest, and then you just, of course, double stick tape a piece of sandpaper onto that, and you've got something which exactly fits the curve you want. Well, that was it for this time. I hope some of you got something out of it, and until next time, goodbye for now.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi. I've still got my first ever electric guitar, and I've mentioned this before. I've painted it multiple times. It was a Strat with a floating bridge, but I filled the bridge and the hole for the bridge, the route for the bridge, and just to practice doing that on a guitar. So I've definitely abused that one and kept it and used it over and over again. And I quite enjoy that is my, like, it's had this journey with me through playing and now building.
My first guitar has a story. I have it now, but yeah, it's a story. Kind of a long story, but short version. I'd had it for a few years. It was the first one I played for a few years, and moved to Kansas, and I sold it to a friend, and he sold it to some friend of his, and he sold it to some, and I don't know how many friends it went through. And after, I don't know, 15, 20 years, it wound up back to that first friend. And when my brother came down for Christmas a couple of years ago, he sent that guitar with him.
Oh,
so my first guitar went all over Kansas and somehow came back to me. And oh my God, it was trash. The headstock had been broke at one point. I mean, it was not a good guitar to start with, but it was garbage when it got back to me. So I had this idea. I'll just strip all the hardware off, and I'll use that hardware, build a new one, and it'll be like a reincarnation of my first guitar. And I went to take the bridge off, and the block on the trim just crumbled, and I haven't been able to find a replacement. So it's just sitting in pieces in the corner of the shop. But I do have my first guitar.
Yeah, I've got most of my first guitar. I don't have the body, but I've got the neck and all the. I don't got the bridge anymore. Pickups and bits and pieces of it. It was pulled apart for different projects, and the body the body was incorporated to some other projects that were non-guitar related, and I've still got that. I actually made early on a body for it just out of a lump of wood that I had hanging around, and just that was in my cigar box guitar sort of days. So I pretty much made like a small body and used cheap parts just to see if I could get it working again with the different pickups. So I've got bits of my first one around still.
Eric's asking what my guitar was. It was a Celebrity Ovation. For a real short time, they did some electrics, and who knows?
I had no idea what fret wire was or how it was installed. I'd never even considered play guitar for so long, never looked at it and realized that someone cut into the neck and then hammered in some wire to it.
Yeah. Well, that was like the first revelation for me when somebody, I was doing other stuff, and somebody asked if I'd looked into cigar box guitars, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And I had to Google it, and I was like, holy shit, it never occurred to me that you could just order fret wire and do this stuff. I mean, it makes perfect sense. People repair guitars all day long. I just never thought about it.
Yeah. Always felt like there was an extra little bit of magic you needed to make a guitar.
Yeah. You can't just do this in your garage. You have to have
machines, computers, scientists.
Yeah. A Fender factory.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been eye-opening, actually, seeing the quality of guitars that come out of the factories compared to ones that we can make. And how just the extra time and care on things like fretwork and getting the neck carved, feeling really nice, can make them feel a whole lot nicer than like $1,000 guitars you buy from big names that frets aren't in evenly on level.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with the guitar building, I've seen the same process, thing done with lots of different techniques or different processes, like different ways to put your frets in, different ways to mark something up, different ways to do a certain type of finish on your guitar. And by watching so many different people, it helps you realize what is the right one for you because of either the way you work or the tools you've got or the amount of money you've got to spend. Are you looking for an excuse to build a guitar? Or do you just want to be part of the community and see other people's builds? Why not take part in the Jörg's Cup? It's a community build-along where anyone can take part by simply sharing your builds either as photos or videos on social media and using the hashtag Jörg's Cup. The build-along is named after Jürgen Zoller of Zoller Guitars, a valued member of the Guitar Builders Collective who regularly commented on other people's builds, giving them encouragement and ideas and helping to start conversations. The whole point of this build-along is not a competition, but to grow the community, to make online friends, to share ideas and inspire others. By following the hashtag Jörg's Cup, you can see other builds and engage in conversations in the comments section. You can add your content and get feedback from others. This year's competition ends on the 23rd of April, with next year's one starting the day after. At the end of April, we at the Guitar Builders Collective will be asking you to send us some photos of your guitar. even if it's not finished. And then over on our Instagram page, we will be sharing the submissions from everybody, giving everybody a chance to see your work, to go follow your social media pages, and to engage in conversation with you, as we hope you will with them. Perhaps you've already started a build and you want to share what you've done with others. Well, just start using that hashtag now. Jürgen was a friendly and supportive guy, and to help commemorate him, this competition will be friendly and supportive too. If you want to, you can buy a Zola Guitars t-shirt, the proceeds of which go to leukemia charities, or even make a small donation yourself. Wearing the t-shirts will help spread the word of the competition too. But you can do that by sharing this post and others on your social media, in your forums, and with anyone you know that might be interested. Everyone is welcome, and if you're stuck for inspiration, this year we have an optional theme: use what you've got. You can find out more via the Guitar Builders Collective forum, the Instagram page, or our Facebook group.